Embodiment A basically covers the concept being basically a metal detector for mounting on a typical power saw. This could also theoretically be arranged to mount on other types of power tools. The purpose of it is to actually save you from ruining your saw blades from nails. I mean, there's just so many times that you can easily dull a blade by running into a bunch of nails on a wall. This allows you an early warning. It has a little metal detector here which projects out in front of the blade. Its range should be quite limited and designed to be quite limited so that it does not detect too broad of a range. And of course it can be zeroed for the metal in the saw itself, so that shouldn't present a problem for the electronics inside of it. Um, but basically, this will give you a visual warning, when you're about to hit a nail, so you can kind of stop and assess what's going on, before you ruin your saw blade. Because even a cheap saw blade, adds up. So it's just nice to have something like this. And the device is, as you can see here, retractable. Um, so, but again, this could be a fairly inexpensive little device to tool up on, and I think it'd be a big seller. And like I said, if you guys aren't interested in it, I'll take it to direct response TV, because something like this would really sell on infomercials. So, but I'm bringing it to you guys first because I do have a lot of other tool inventions, some of which I'll take to direct response TV, but some I'll bring direct to manufacturer, what I call the PPAX venue. Which, if you're watching this, you're probably part of the PPAX venue, because that's who I intend to start offering this to first. So you're probably a tool manufacturer of some kind. I haven't decided on exactly who I'm going to talk to first yet with this, and who I'm going to offer this first to. But basically, definitely read the text. Not only text at the end of the patent, the main body of the text, but also the text in the drawings themselves too. It's chock full of good information. It's not written in legalese because it's a provisional patent, so you can write it any old way you want, as long as you fully cover how to make and use the device. And I, do that sufficiently for APOSHA. So at the end of the day, this certainly will, carry weight as a priority date. So at the end of the day, there are other embodiments in here like this, but you can see this first embodiment certainly has a lot of little adjustment features. Can go back and forth, in and out. There are various ways of adjusting it. And this little part here is actually a little spring connector. So if you bump it into something, the spring will actually, have a little give to it, so it won't break anything. It'll, allow it to, react to, unforeseen bumps and so forth. And this is a different version too of the head, so there's several different versions that you may want to utilize, for your particular metal detector design. But I don't intend, I don't try to re-engineer the metal detector here. That's well-established technology to APOSHA. So again, I'm really just covering the basic concepts for the most part in the patent. But my background is in electrical engineering, and I can tell you this can be done. So you know but somebody with even more experience at this than me can do it a lot faster. So but I just do not have the money or resources to do it. I mean, I've had a really hard year, really hard life, and honestly, the kind of story I've gone through, the kind of story that would get me as a guest spot on Oprah Winfrey for the last 15, 20 years. So at the end of the day, I'm finally opening up my coffers of over 2,000 marketable inventions, and that's out of 4,000 total ideas. That's after I've weeded out the 2,000 either obsolete or stupid ideas or crackpot ideas, but it still leaves me with 2,000 marketable inventions. So I've, because it changes the patent laws and everything else, and me actually just finally, as well understanding the patents, I finally broke down and read a patent book. Um, 3 times, honestly. So for the first time, I'm really actually intimately familiar with patents and the process now. it made me realize these opportunities actually exist now, particularly with the new patent laws. So that I don't need to be a millionaire to do this. Otherwise, I would have started doing this a decade ago. Selling off my IP, because I've been accumulating this for over 25 years. That's why I have so many product ideas, and this certainly represents a handful of them. But in this one provisional patent application, which are limited to 100 pages, I've got about 87 separate distinguishable products in it. So, if that tells you anything. But again, I've got lots of more ideas where this came from. This is just the first handful of them. I expect to be doing this over a number of years, actually trying to liquidate all this IP. In fact, at some point I went to hiring some help, like Edison did. But the fact of the matter is, though, anyway, to get on with the discussion here, let's see, embodiment B was, for that head. Embodiment C is a slightly different design, which involves a printed circuit pancake coil instead. And this is, something that I do believe can be done, but I'm not totally sure about that. But it's certainly be a lot less expensive, because it's just a printed circuit, pancake coil, basically, on a printed circuit board. It does have some neat little features, like a built-in laser line generator, like you see here, as a little bonus. But the thing about this is that if it does work, you'll still get less early warning with it, because the coil is closer to the blade. I don't think the blade would provide an anomaly that the CPU inside here couldn't detect. So with the coil being that close to it, you never know. But anyway, certainly more of an R&D project on your part, but the fact of the matter is that there's a good chance it could be done. So it's got certain advantages, and there are many different ways this could be mounted, including even gecko materials, let alone double-sided adhesives, or some form of clamping mechanism, which I do have a detail on in here somewhere. Yeah, right here. This is a possible clamping system that could be used, because most of those saw plates tend to have diagonal edges that can be clamped onto. Now, let's see, going down to embodiment D here. Now this has a little extra feature on it, which I think could actually be quite useful. It may sound a little retarded to you at first, but I mean, it could be quite useful. And it has a basically it uses optical mouse sensing technology on it. So basically, when you're running a saw like over a piece of plywood or something like that, it actually uses the optical mouse sensor, technology very similar, if not identical, to an optical mouse, to actually measure the displacement of it on your display here. So, in theory, when you're starting to cut, you can zero the thing and, and actually measure. Keep an eye on the screen here, and actually you can program it to beep at a certain, length. So if you want a 36-inch cut, you can cut 36 inches, that kind of thing. Now this is more of a conceptual idea, and has some obvious, let's say, bottlenecks that might have to be worked out in it. It would have to be looked at from a prototyping standpoint. It's kind of a gimmicky thing. It would sell well on an infomercial, though, but it's got a little bit of a gimmicky thing to it because of the reset. Again, I think the accuracy could be sufficiently good, to actually make this work in practice. And it's a little better than like a wheel or something like that, which you could use, because it's essentially non-contact. But the fact of the matter is it's a promising, concept, to apply to certain power tools, so you could actually measure the distance you're cutting, because, it'd be kind of nice to be able to do that with a saw, honestly. Because usually you do have kind of a good idea of what the length of cut you want would be. Although I don't know how much I'd want to trust it in practice. So it's kind of more of a gimmick, but it's just got some intriguing possibilities to it. I can't just let it go, so I incorporated this in here as a little possibility. It may work better like built into a router, or actually built into a saw, Because if it's actually built into the saw, it might make more sense, because the detector itself could actually be parallel with where the blade is, so, and maybe even kind of close to the blade, so it might actually do a little better of a job, accuracy wise. But again, usually you're going to want accuracy at least down to 1/4 of an inch, at the least. So I'm still not just totally sure how valuable of a little device this would be, but it just seems like it might have some good applications. Maybe if not in saws, maybe in like routers or something perhaps, but I just, saws are, if you can actually have that built into a saw, if it's actually fairly accurate, it could actually work. It actually could key itself in self-zero when it first, because, when you're starting to cut into a piece of plywood or something, the sound of the saw changes. You could have it key on that sound to zero itself. That would be one possibility. But again, it's one of those things that'd be kind of a development project, much more so than the metal detector. So it's the kind of thing that's nice to have in your portfolio in case you want to do something with it later, but it's just hard to say. The point is using this optical mouse technology kind of this way could in of itself be a very valuable patent. And down here in embodiment E, I start to explore that possibility here. This is actually a tape measure based on that concept of sorts. And what what it really is a tape measure that you can measure curves with. So you can, if you got curves drawn on something, you can get a quick measurement just by tracing it around, using it like a mouse, basically to trace the curve. And so that allows you to, not only trace the curve and get a measurement off of it if you need that for some reason, but also to actually digitize it and actually send it to your computer or whatnot, because in theory it can actually do that, accurate enough to actually digitize it that way. But the fact of the matter is that that's just one possibility that a way that technology could be used. Let's see. And again, by all means, read the text, because I discuss a lot of technical issues in it with doing some of these things. Embodiment F, is kind of a straight, version of it with wheels. So, if you want to measure straight lines with it, you can retract the wheels and actually measure it in a straight line just by rolling it in a straight line, across the surface. Then you can, lift the wheels up and use it much like the previous tape measure. Then embodiment G actually takes the whole thing one step further. It works like the embodiments, the previous couple embodiments we discussed, but it is actually a little robot that you can actually put a pencil in, so you can actually duplicate a curve on a piece of plywood or what have you, and and take it to another piece of plywood and just press print, and basically a little robot will, from the position you set it on there, it'll trace out the curve or duplicate the curve on another piece of plywood. Again, in some ways. Here, its embodiment H is actually taking a regular tape measure and incorporating that other tape measure technology into it. So you actually have the best of both worlds, by the way. So, but this is the kind of technology that if you bought this item, here's some CAD files, representing some of these embodiments here. It's this is that embodiment we're just looking at with the little optical mouse sensors on it. This is the version without the without the sensor, and again, it has that little laser line that comes out of this little point here. And here's the metal detector version of it. Here's that tape measure version of it right here. And like I said, I'm just doing this for you kind of as a courtesy because, since there's no physical prototype, there's not going to be any other like you know demonstration videos or anything on this stuff. So little robot version of it with a little pen holder in it, retractable wheels and so forth. So anyway, you can kind of see what we're what I'm talking about here a little better. So anyway, without further ado, thank you for your time, and be sure to watch the next video.